At my mother's funeral, my aunt stood at the pulpit and painted her as a selfish woman who tore our family apart. The entire church heard it, but I knew the truth. So, I put it on the projector. Please give me a moment to tell you what really happened. And if it stays with you, I hope you'll support this story by sharing it with someone who needs to hear it. My name is Eli Sanders. I was 26 when I lost my mom, Monica. She was my everything, kind, patient, and stronger than most people ever knew. Her funeral was held at a small church in our hometown. I hadn't seen most of my extended family in years. There were old faces, tight hugs, and quiet whispers. But nothing could have prepared me for what my Aunt Deborah did. Deborah was Monica's older sister. They hadn't spoken in over a decade. Yet somehow, Deborah stood at the pulpit that day to deliver the eulogy. I sat in the front row, still and silent, as she began. She didn't start with kind words. Instead, she said things like, "Sometimes the choices people make destroy good men." And my brother-in-law was never the same after Monica left. Her voice was full of fake sadness, but every sentence was a knife. She was blaming my mom, painting her as a homewrecker, a woman who broke the family. And the worst part? People around me were nodding, agreeing, believing it. My heart pounded. My hands shook in my lap, because I knew she was lying. Deborah had always tried to protect the image of my father, but she knew what he had done. She knew the truth behind their divorce. My mom had told me everything, and after she passed, I found more letters, journals, even voice recordings. My mom had never wanted to hurt anyone. She just wanted the truth to be known, even if she couldn't say it herself. So I came prepared. I had asked the church ahead of time if I could play a short tribute video at the end of the service. They agreed. I brought the file on an old thumb drive, ready for the moment. After Deborah finished her eulogy, the room went quiet. I stood up and walked slowly to the front. My voice didn't shake as I took the mic. "Before we go," I said, "my mom left something behind. I think she deserves the last word." I nodded to the staff, and they dimmed the lights. The projector screen lowered, and then my mom's voice filled the room. "If you're watching this, I'm gone, but not voiceless." And just like that, the lies started to crumble. After the video started playing at the funeral, everyone saw the first crack in the story they had believed for years. But that lie, the one my aunt told in the church, was only the tip of something much deeper. My mom, Monica, raised me on her own. She worked 2 jobs, packed my lunches every day, and stayed up late helping me with school projects. She was soft-spoken but strong in quiet ways. What people didn't know was that she had been pushed out of her own family long ago. And the person who made that happen was her sister, Deborah. Deborah had always been the favorite daughter, the one who could do no wrong in my grandparents' eyes. She used that power to turn everyone against my mom after something awful happened in our family. There was a scandal. My father had been accused of hurting my mom, and I saw things as a kid that I'll never forget. But Deborah told the rest of the family that my mom was just emotional, that she was overreacting, exaggerating, trying to tear the family apart. The truth was, my dad had been abusive. He yelled, pushed, slammed doors. I remember hiding behind the couch once when I was 6, covering my ears while they fought in the kitchen. My mom never fought back. She just cried and tried to keep me safe. She finally left him when she found bruises on my arm and realized he had started lashing out at me too. But when she left, Deborah spun the story. Told the family that Monica had walked out on a good man, that she was selfish, unstable, and they believed her, just like they believed her at the funeral. Growing up, I barely saw any of my aunts, uncles, or cousins. They sent cards once in a while, but never visited. When we showed up to holiday dinners, they avoided us. I used to wonder what my mom had done wrong, but now I know it wasn't what she did. It was what she refused to hide. After she died, I found her journals in a box under her bed. Pages and pages of truth. Stories of what she went through, how hard she fought, how much it hurt to be cut off by the people she once called family. She had even written about Deborah and how she always knew her sister pretended not to see what was really happening. Reading those pages changed me. That's why I couldn't let the lie stand. After the funeral, I stayed in my mom's house for a few days. It still smelled like her lavender lotion and the cinnamon tea she drank every night. I couldn't sleep much, so I spent my nights going through her things. That's when I found it. A cardboard box in the back of her closet, covered in a soft old blanket. Inside were her journals, photos, and a few labeled cassette tapes. I sat on the floor and opened one of the journals. The handwriting was neat, a little faded. The first entry I read was dated over 20 years ago. She wrote about the night she was disinherited. That night, Deborah had come to her apartment, angry and cold. My mom had written. She told me to keep my mouth shut if I ever wanted to stay part of the family. Said I was ruining everything. The reason? My mom had refused to lie. Their father, my grandfather, had rewritten his will shortly before he died. Deborah convinced him to cut Monica out completely. My mom had learned about it and tried to speak up, but no one believed her. Or maybe they just didn't want to hear it. There were more entries like that. Stories of family dinners where no one spoke to her, birthdays spent alone, calls that were never returned. There were also stories of me, how much she loved me, how proud she was when I got into college, how she used to watch me sleep and pray I'd grow up free from the pain she carried. I found an envelope full of photos. One showed her with a black eye, holding me as a baby. Another had a date scribbled on the back with the words, "Proof I never wanted this to be hidden." Then came the tapes. I found an old recorder in a drawer and played one. It was her voice, calm but heavy. "If you're hearing this, it means I'm not there anymore. But I need you to know the truth." I listened to every second, heart pounding. That's when I knew what I had to do. I took everything, the journals, the recordings, the photos, and started working on a video. I used clips of her voice reading from her journal. I scanned the pages and added slow pans over her handwritten words. I showed the pictures, one by one, and I timed it with soft piano music in the background. It took me 3 days, working late into the night, but I finally finished it. A 7-minute video that told the truth. The whole truth. And it wasn't meant to attack anyone. It was just my mom's voice, her pain, her truth, finally heard out loud. I watched it one last time before saving it to a thumb drive. Then I whispered, "Don't worry, Mom. You're not voiceless anymore." Before the funeral, I called the church office and asked if I could play a short tribute video at the end of the service. The woman on the phone was kind and said it wouldn't be a problem. I told her it was something personal, something my mom would have wanted people to see. She didn't ask questions, just said, "Bring a USB. We'll have the projector ready." I packed the thumb drive into my coat pocket the morning of the funeral. It was old, a little scratched, but reliable. I checked it 3 times before I left the house. At the church, the room slowly filled with family, friends, old neighbors. Everyone dressed in black, hugging each other, wiping tears. I sat near the front, my hands folded in my lap. The thumb drive felt like a weight in my pocket. Then Deborah stood up. She walked to the front like she belonged there. She hadn't seen my mom in years, hadn't even visited when Mom got sick. But there she was, standing tall, voice smooth and controlled. She started talking about forgiveness, about poor choices, and how some people destroy good men without realizing the damage they leave behind. I clenched my fists in my lap. People nodded along. A few sniffled. No one looked surprised, because they had all heard Deborah's version of the story for years. The version where my mom was the one who ruined everything. But I knew better. As Deborah spoke, I kept my eyes on the floor. I imagined my mom sitting beside me in the pew, her hand squeezing mine like she used to when I was nervous. I imagined her telling me, "It's okay. Just breathe." When Deborah finally stepped down, there was a quiet pause in the room. People shifted in their seats. I stood up. My voice was steady. I didn't raise it. I just walked up to the front and took the mic. "Before we go," I said, "my mom left something behind. I think she deserves the last word." There was a little confusion at first. A few people whispered. Deborah looked at me sharply, her mouth tight. But the church staff dimmed the lights. The screen lowered, and I handed the thumb drive to the technician. The room went still, and then my mom's voice began to play. The lights dimmed slowly, and the church fell into an uneasy silence. For a moment, there was only darkness and stillness, the kind that makes your chest feel too tight. Then the soft sound of piano keys began to play, slow, gentle, like the beginning of a lullaby. The screen flickered to life. Then came her voice. "If you're watching this," my mom said, "I'm gone." But not voiceless. I saw heads turn, people shift in their seats. Some froze completely. Her voice was calm, steady, but full of emotion. It filled the church like she was right there with us. The first image was an old photo of her holding me as a baby, smiling with tired eyes. Then came the journal pages, her neat handwriting, scanned and zoomed in slowly, showing her words about fear, pain, and betrayal. My sister told me to stay quiet. She said no one would believe me. She said I was ruining everything. The video didn't accuse. It simply told the truth. Her truth. A photo appeared on screen, one I had almost left out. A bruise under her eye, barely covered with makeup. The date was scrawled in the corner. She had taken the photo herself. Proof, even when no one asked for it. As more journal entries rolled by, her voice read them aloud. I was told to stay silent to keep the family together. But silence never kept me safe. Only the truth did that. You could hear people whispering. Someone near the back let out a quiet sob. Then, about 5 minutes in, the audio changed. It was grainy, like it had been recorded on an old phone. But the voice was unmistakable. It was Deborah, laughing. "She's always so dramatic," Deborah said in a half-mocking tone. "Honestly, Monica's just bitter because no one ever took her side. I mean, can you blame them?" Gasps filled the room. Some mouths dropped open. Others just stared, stunned. My mom's voice came back in over the music. "I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted someone, anyone, to listen. If not for me, then for Eli. So he could grow up knowing I wasn't weak. I was just tired of pretending everything was okay. More photos. More words. More truth. 7 minutes. That's how long the video lasted. But it felt like the whole world stopped for those 7 minutes. When the screen went dark again, the silence was louder than anything else. No one moved. No one spoke. And for the first time in decades, my mom had finally been heard. The screen went black, and the piano music faded to silence. No one clapped. No one moved. The church was frozen in place, like time had stopped. I stood there for a second, staring at the blank screen, listening to the sound of nothing. No coughs, no shuffling feet, just stunned silence. Then I turned and walked off the podium. My steps felt heavy, but my heart felt lighter than it had in years. Deborah sat in the third pew. Her face was pale, and her mouth twitched like she wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. She didn't look at me. She just stared straight ahead, her hands clenched in her lap. The same woman who had confidently told her version of the story minutes ago now looked like the walls around her had cracked wide open. A few people began whispering. Others quietly got up and left the room, avoiding my eyes as they passed by. One uncle stood near the exit with tears in his eyes. A cousin stared down at the floor, cheeks red, arms crossed tightly. I made my way back to the front row and sat down beside my mother's casket. I didn't cry. I just sat there, breathing slowly, my fingers laced together in my lap. I stared at the simple white flowers resting on top of the casket. She would have hated the big church service, the fake speeches. But I know she would have been proud of what I did. A few moments later, someone leaned toward me from the pew behind. It was Mrs. Landry, one of my mom's old friends from the neighborhood. Her voice was soft, barely a whisper. I had no idea, she said. She never talked about it. I nodded, not trusting my voice yet, because even though my mom had carried all that pain for years, she'd never wanted to burden anyone. That's who she was. Quiet strength. I looked around at the room one more time. The ones who stayed had faces full of shame, confusion, or guilt. But I wasn't angry at them. Not anymore. I just felt sad. Sad that it took this long for the truth to be seen. Sad that my mom wasn't alive to see them finally listen. But even in the silence, I knew one thing for sure. She had been heard. At last. After the service ended, people began to drift out slowly, some still whispering, others silent and stunned. I stayed seated for a while, not ready to move. Then I felt someone approach from behind. It was Rachel, my cousin, Deborah's daughter. She looked upset. Her arms were crossed tightly, her cheeks flushed. She didn't sit down, just stood there next to the pew. That was cruel, she said, voice sharp. I looked up at her, my expression calm. It was the truth. She shook her head, eyes glassy. You didn't have to play all of that in front of everyone. She didn't get a chance to speak when she was alive, I said. She deserved this. Rachel opened her mouth to argue but stopped. Her eyes dropped to the floor. I remember. Mom used to tell me not to talk about your mom. She always acted like Monica had done something terrible, but there were moments that didn't make sense. I remember one Christmas when I was little. I asked why Aunt Monica wasn't coming, and my mom said she made her choices, but she wouldn't say more. She looked at me again, her voice softer now. I didn't know. I swear. I nodded slowly. You do now. She didn't say anything else. Just gave a small nod and walked away, wiping her eyes. A few minutes later, my Uncle Ben, one of the older brothers, came up. He didn't say anything at first. He just wrapped his arms around me and pulled me into a hug. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have asked questions a long time ago. That hug felt like the first real connection I'd had with my mom's side of the family in years. I didn't expect forgiveness or understanding from everyone, but I could feel something shift, small but real. Deborah didn't say a word. She walked straight down the aisle, her chin up, her face blank. Her heels clicked on the floor as she passed, not even glancing my way. She walked right out of the church and didn't come back. That night, I stayed at my mom's house again. I was in the living room, folding away some of her old clothes into boxes, when I heard a soft knock on the door. No one was there, but someone had slipped an envelope under it. Inside was a stack of old papers, legal documents, original versions of my mom's birthright, proof that she was supposed to receive her share of the family estate. One page had a sticky note attached to it. It simply read, she was telling the truth. I'm sorry. No name, no signature, but I didn't need one, because that envelope, that was everything I needed to open a legal case. Everything Deborah had hidden for years, finally in my hands, and I wasn't going to let it sit quietly. Not anymore. A few days after the funeral, I met with a lawyer. I brought everything, the journals, the photos, the audio recordings, and the original birthright documents that had been slipped under my door. I laid them out one by one across her desk. She didn't say much at first, just kept reading and listening. When the tape of Deborah mocking my mom played, she paused it halfway and said, This is big. We filed to have the documents legally reviewed. Deborah had convinced the family years ago that my mother was unstable, unreliable, and not fit to inherit anything from their father. But now, with so much evidence in hand, that lie began to fall apart fast. As soon as Deborah found out I had reopened the case, she went into defense mode. She started calling relatives, saying I was grieving too hard, and making up stories because I couldn't handle losing my mom. She even hinted that my mom had suffered from mental breakdowns and that I had doctored the videos to paint her in a bad light. But people weren't buying it anymore. The journals had my mom's handwriting, dated and consistent. The recordings were clearly her voice, played in court with timestamps that lined up with key events. A few neighbors and family friends stepped forward too, offering statements about things they remembered, fights, bruises, strange family arguments they had brushed off back then. Deborah's carefully built version of events started crumbling. One by one, family members stopped returning her calls. A cousin posted publicly, "I don't know what's true anymore, but I believe Monica deserved better." Another aunt reached out to me privately, saying she was sorry she never asked questions. For once, silence was no longer protecting Deborah. I didn't fight for the money. I told my lawyer that if anything came out of it, I wanted it filed in my mother's name. I wanted her words, her truth, attached to the legal record. I didn't care if it made headlines or stayed buried in court documents. I just wanted it written somewhere official. Monica Sanders told the truth. She was never unstable. She was silenced. When the paperwork was finalized and the ruling reflected her story, I sat alone in my mother's living room, holding the legal notice. I didn't cry. I just whispered, "You did it, Mom. You were right. And now they know." The sun was setting when I walked into my mom's house, now my house. The place was quiet, just as she had left it. Her favorite mug was still on the kitchen shelf. The blanket she used for reading was folded neatly on the couch. Everything felt frozen in time, like she might walk through the front door any second and ask what I wanted for dinner. I didn't change much about the house. I couldn't. Every corner held a piece of her. The garden she planted, the photos on the wall, even the scratch in the hallway floor from when I tripped over my toy truck as a kid. It was all still there. And it felt right that way. That night, I sat at her desk. I hadn't opened her last journal yet, the one I found tucked under the others in the box. The leather cover was worn, the pages soft and slightly yellowed. I took a deep breath and opened it. The final entry was short. Just a few lines, dated a few months before she passed. "Maybe Eli will one day tell the truth if I can't. Maybe they'll finally hear me. Maybe not. Either way, I believe in him." I read it 3 times. Then I closed the journal gently and stood up. I walked to the mantel above the fireplace, the place where she used to keep birthday cards and old pictures, and placed the journal there. Next to it, I lit a small white candle. The soft flame flickered, casting a warm glow on her words. I stood there in silence, watching it dance. No big speech. No dramatic music. Just peace. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Rachel. "I'm proud of you. Aunt Monica would be too." I stared at the screen for a second before replying. "Thanks. That means more than you know." Rachel and I hadn't been close growing up, but after everything that had happened, it felt like a bridge had started to form, not built on guilt, but on honesty. I didn't need everyone in the family to change. I just needed the truth to stand. That night, I made tea in my mom's old mug and sat on the porch, the candle still glowing through the window behind me. The world didn't feel different, but I did. This wasn't the kind of victory people write headlines about. It didn't come with applause or celebration. It was quiet, steady, and honest, just like my mom had been. And in that silence, with the truth finally out there, I felt her with me. Not gone, just finally heard. A few weeks after everything settled, after the case was closed, after the whispers died down, after the family splintered into silence, I hosted a small gathering in my mom's backyard. Nothing big. No decorations. No fancy speeches. Just a few close friends, neighbors who remembered her fondly, and Rachel, who showed up with a tray of lemon cookies, the kind Mom used to make. We sat on folding chairs under string lights I had hung earlier that afternoon. The garden she loved so much was blooming. She would have been proud of that. There wasn't a ceremony. No one stood at a podium. People just talked quietly, laughed gently, shared memories. A few told stories about Monica, how she once fixed a neighbor's car battery in the rain, how she always remembered birthdays even if she hadn't seen you in years. Her kindness had lingered in people's lives, even the ones who hadn't known her pain. I didn't want the night to be about what we lost. I wanted it to be about what was finally seen. As the sky darkened and the stars peeked through, I stood up and walked over to the small speaker I had placed on the table. Everyone quieted down. I looked around, meeting a few eyes, Rachel's, Mrs. Landry's, Uncle Ben's. Then I pressed play. My mom's voice came through the speaker, soft but steady. It was her final message, the one she had recorded near the end, after all the journals, after the decisions had been made. If you're hearing this, I guess the silence finally broke. And maybe that's enough. A long pause. I saw people wiping their eyes. To anyone listening, don't let silence win. Ever again. Then her voice shifted, gentler, more personal. And to my son, Eli, I loved you. I always knew you'd remember. You were always paying attention, even when the world tried to make you forget. There was nothing else after that. Just the soft rustle of wind on the recording. Then silence. The group sat there for a long moment. No one moved. No one tried to speak. We didn't need to. Her voice lingered in the air like the breeze. Strong, steady, free. I looked up at the stars and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. There was no more story to tell. No more lies to correct. Only truth. And that night, under those lights, in the garden she once planted with her bare hands, my mother spoke one last time. And the world finally listened. What would you have done if you were in Eli's place? Let the past stay buried, or speak up no matter the cost? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really like to hear your side. And if stories like this speak to you, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know when a new one drops.